All right. Thank you, everyone, for waiting up and having the patience to just while we change these sessions. Like I said, I will not take too much of your time. Let me introduce you to Shalini. Most of y'all in the audience, of course, knows her. Uh, she is the head of strategy and a key person who basically even all of us go to her if we need to know anything about GST. Shalini, taking on from where Mr. Raman left, I will hand it over to you now. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you, Ruchi. A very good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you. I'll start with a big, congratulations to the entire AA ecosystem because all of us have been kind of working to get GST and on AA for a long time now. The discussion started in June 2020, and now at the end of 2022 is when we are near that moment where GST will go live on account aggregator. I'll without taking much time, I'll just put on a presentation and we'll take you through the basics or the specifics of GST and on AA as FIP. We have been working very closely with the GSTN team on it, and some of the things which we'll present are still to be kind of notified, but they are tentative, but we'll kind of put it through the industry so that all of you can start working on putting together your modules, be as a FIP, FIU, LSP. Whosoever is wanting to use this data through AA can start working, doing their preparatory work. That's the intention of this session. So I'll just quickly start with a ecosystem update, not taking more than 2 minutes here because that's not the focus of the session. So as we stand today, more than 1.1 billion accounts have AA facility enabled. In the sense, this account owners can now decide to use account aggregator to share their data. It doesn't mean that they've already started using this facility. They are now unable to use this facility, and 1.1 billion accounts include singly held savings account and sole proprietor current accounts. 2.8 million customers have actually used account aggregator, and they've been growing at a reasonably good growth rate of 50 to 60% month on month. Another good news is that more than 1,700 crore of loans have been disbursed using account aggregator. The initial results have been very encouraging. The lenders are the ones who have optimized their journey are reporting lower drop-off rates. The fraud rates related to bank statement has come down to zero. People are seeing higher conversions happening through account aggregator. So even PFM use cases have picked up really well. So we are in a good shape, and the ecosystem is just waiting for a larger set of data to be available on AA to be able to kind of take it up to scale. As of now, there are 6 account aggregators, 26 FIPs, which include 23 banks and 3 insurance companies, which are already providing data on account aggregator. 96 entities are already using account aggregators. IRDA, SEBI, and PFRDA entities have all been notified to join account aggregator by their respective regulators, and we're expecting them to join as FIPs in the first quarter of next calendar year. And likewise, the session about GST, and so GST would be the first non-financial data that will be available on account aggregator, and it is expected to be give a big boost to the SME sector. And like Mr. Raman highlighted, it is expected to kind of enable lenders to do unsecured lending, small ticket size unsecured lending based on the cash flow of the MSMEs rather than just doing the traditional way of working capital finance. This is just to say that the sector is now cross-sectoral, a picture saying that there are 96 financial institutions live as FIUs, out of which 75 are RBI regulated entities. But we've got a good spread from other regulators as well who are already using data through account aggregator for offering various use cases to the consumers. 26 financial institutions live as FIPs, in which all 12 public sector banks have already gone live. 10 private sector banks and 3 life insurance companies are already there as FIPs. So they're contributing their insurance policy data through account aggregator. So we are sitting at a place where the sector is just going to become cross sectoral, and in fact move beyond financial data. So this is all in terms of an update. I will straight away move to the focus, the theme of the agenda today, which is DSTN as FIP on AA. So this is just a context setting slide, and Mr. Raman has already kind of explained all of it beautifully. So 13.8 million registered taxpayers are the ones who are expected to benefit directly with GST and coming live on AA as FIP. And out of a total base of around 6 to 7 crore or 60 to 70 million MSMEs, it should touch the lives of around 20% of MSMEs in India, which is a very significant number and should be able to help us reach our financial inclusion targets sooner than what it was before. I'll not get into the use cases because this is all all of us here are from banking, lending sector, financial sector, and we're all aware of how it is going to boost MSME credit. Let's get into decoding GSTR as FIP on AA. So basically, the way we see it is in three parts as to who are the entities who can use the facility of data sharing via AA, what will be made available. So in terms of the scope of data, period of data, frequency of data fetch, and how can this data be used. So it be consumed within your existing account aggregator integrations. How would the journey change? How would the discovery consent framework change with GSTR as FIP on AA? Till now, the account aggregator framework has just been working for bank account statements. So we all really need to know that once GSTR comes in, how would it change that process for FIUs, and is there any preparatory work, groundwork they need to do to be able to consume GSTR as it comes on AA? So we'll start with who. So the facility of sharing data on GSTN will be available to all regular taxpayers, and the definition of regular taxpayers here include normal taxpayers, SEZ units, developers, opted out taxpayer in and opted out. Wherever the status is active, their details will be shared. The data for taxpayers would be available irrespective of their entity types, even if they're sole proprietor, partnership, private, public, corporate. All data would be available. This is different from what we have in the banking domain on bank accounts, where currently only singly held and sole proprietor, say singly held savings account and sole proprietor current accounts are available. So what we are saying is GSTN would be open to all kinds of taxpayers. The primary channel, or the primary authorized signatory whose mobile number is seeded in GSTN records will give will be the person authorized to give consent to share GSTN data to any potential FIU, which is, as we all know, currently limited to the one of any entity registered and regulated with one of the four financial sector regulators. So basically, what we are saying is that given that there is only one authorized signatory which is seeded in the GSTN record, so irrespective of the entity type being sole prop, partnership, private, or corporate, public corporate, it is this single person, the authorized signatory, who would be able to provide a consent. So hence, there is no reason for any entity type to be excluded from data sharing on account aggregator for GST. In terms of the scope of data that is being available to be shared on account aggregator, so like we all started with a longer list of data points, but I think the policymakers just want to take it slow, and they've started with sharing some of the the core data for GSTR, which anyhow will be needed by most of the lenders to activate their large use cases for MSME credit on account aggregator. So to start with, GSTR 1 table A, which is a monthly or a quarterly statement of all outward supply of sales of furnished by the registered taxpayers or MSME. So basically, any entity, any MSME with a turnover of less than 5 crore is allowed to file a quarterly statement, and any MSME with a turnover of above 5 crore will have to file a monthly statement. So accordingly, whichever frequency of return filing they have opted for, that data will be made available on account aggregator. The second is GSTR 3B, which is a monthly or quarterly self-declared summary GST returns, and the return filing details, which basically show the date of last return filing, mode of filing, status of return filing. So this is a publicly available information. This will also be available through account aggregator, and the basic profile details of the MSME. So we'll get into the specifics of each of these in the next slide. What is currently not available is, a table other than table 4. So table 8, 9, 10, and 12, there are many other tables which have their, each one of them have some usage in different lending use cases, but as of now that has been kept outside the scope of GSTN as FIP on EA. GSTR 2A, which is a summary of, auto generated report of the purchases of a MSME or a taxpayer. Even that is not currently made available through account aggregator, and it's likewise all other GSTRs are currently outside the scope of this. But what we understand is, and this has been after a lot of deliberations with the financial community, that GSTR 1, table 4, and 3B are really the core data points which would be sufficient to kickstart the initial use cases for financial services on account aggregator. This is just a summary of how what each of these tables and data points look like. Like GSTR1 is used for estimating the past and future cash flow of MSMEs. Just the inward cash flows, not the outward cash flows. So you won't really be able to do a net cash flow analysis, but a gross cash flow analysis. It also helps in understanding, evaluating the top 10 buyers of the MSME. What is a buyer profile? Is there any concentration risk? Further, so this, while all of this is very important for unsecured lending, it could also enable underwriting specific invoices, which is what GST Sahai initiative is all about. Saying that if there are certain invoices which are the lenders are willing to underwrite and lend against, that can be done immediately, that thus releasing a lot of working capital financing for the MSMEs on a go. GSTR 3B, again, summary figures of sales, purchase, input tax, credit claim, net tax payable, again, helps in establishing the aggregated turnover of the taxpayer and their tax compliance behavior. The return filing details and basic profile details. Basic profile details include address, legal name of the entity, PAN. Some of these entries would be really powerful for the lenders to cross-validate the data which they are pulling from other sources or through self-declared information that the taxpayer or the borrower has given in the application form. Another important thing to remember is that return filing and basic profile details will be made available as default fields along with GSTR 1 and 3B, and as standalone fields as well. So they are the default fields which you'll always get as a part of any fetch you make on account aggregator. There is a complete list of data fields which have been kind of released by approved by GST. However, RB Rabbit has yet to notify the data schema. They are working on it. I'll just take you through a glimpse of these data fields. We'll share this with the audience after this call, and so that all of you can even start experimenting, going through the fields, setting up your BRE rule engines and all of that using that. So this is a comprehensive list of data fields that may be available, but we need to be careful, just kind of understand that this is still yet to be notified by Rabbit. So there could be some minor variations in what you are seeing on the screen here. Right? We'll share this with all of you separately. I'll just go back to the presentation again. So, what was the data period, that is for which the data will be available on account aggregator? So, as of now, GSTN 2 has put a limit of 18 months. So, the difference, the gap between from and to date cannot be more than 18 months. And the data shared will be for a complete return period and not for a part of it. So if you look at an illustration, let's say, if there is a consent request which has been raised for data pertaining from 8th February 2022 to 7th Jan 2023. In this case, you given that February is not a complete month and January, the to date is also not a complete month, the data will be shared only for the periods, the complete months between that. So it would be from March 2022 to December 2022. So, in case, and here again, the difference would be based on quarterly versus monthly filing. So, if it is a quarterly filing, the data will be shared for three completed quarters that fall between these two dates, which in this case would be April to June 22, July to September 22, and October to December 22. If the return filing frequency is monthly, obviously it will be shared for every completed month, which is March 22 to December 22. So this is to say, because the GST and even though invoices are uploaded on GST and on an ongoing basis, till the time a return is signed and filed, the invoices can be changed. And to safeguard any lender from potential changes in invoices before the return is signed, it has been decided that the data will be shared for a complete return period, a period where the return filing has been completed and the chances of reversals are low. If at all it has to be done, it has to be done through a formal entry in the credit debit note section. Again, GST and data will be available for both for a one time and a recurring fetch. So, all of us who want to use GST and data for loan monitoring or a regular, kind of budgeting or PFM service being made available to MSMEs, will be able to pull GST and data on a regular basis. But again, the data fetch frequency will have to be aligned to the return filing frequency. So if it is a monthly pull, then the next update would be a monthly, the latest, return which is filed. So the return filing frequency is quarterly. The recurring pull will give the data of the latest quarterly return filed. So if we work with this logic, then as a FIU in the consent artifact, it would make sense for people to just kind of do a monthly and a quarterly recurring fetch depending on the return filing frequency of the taxpayer. Another important thing which is worth highlighting is that the maximum data which GSTN as a FIP is agreed to share on account aggregator in a single session is 5 MB. So if the data request if there's a data request and this data packet corresponding to that data request is more than 5 MB, the data will not be shared and the GST and FIP will give back an error code saying that the consent request has to be modified, the period has to be shortened to for them to be able to reshare the data. But again, this 5 MB number has been worked upon scientifically. So on an average, people with taxpayers with a turnover of up to 100 crores, and this is all data released by GSTN, the average monthly invoices are 220. So if we were to say, and more than tax, 99% of the total taxpayer base on GSTN are with a turnover of less than 100 crore. So if we take this number of 220 monthly invoices over a period of, let's say, 18 months, the maximum which is allowed on GSTN to be shared, and the average invoice date size of 1 KB, which we have again checked with the existing channels which are facilitating GST and data share, the data packet size would still be less than 4 MB. So even if it is slightly higher, so more than 200 300 invoices also, it should really fit in this 5 MB size. So we don't really see this as a constraint. However, as we go on, we will kind of learn from our initial experiences, and we can again take the feedback back to GST, and if this becomes a constraining criteria. In terms of the process of how would GSTN work on account aggregator? So on account aggregator, there are three key steps. One is discovery, second is linking, and third is giving a consent. So let's start with discovery. Currently, for bank account statement, the discovery mode is using the registered mobile number of the consumer in the bank account, which has to be verified by a OTP. That will change for GST. So it will be a combination of the mobile number of the primary authorized signatory and the PAN of the GST taxpayer. So GSTN will use a combination of these two strong identifiers, the mobile number of the primary authorized signatory and GST taxpayer. And the primary authorized signatory obviously will first need to verify the mobile number through a OTP. And then GSTN, using these two strong identifiers, will pull out and display all active GSTNs equivalent to bank accounts registered with the same PAN and mobile number. Post this, once the GST taxpayer sees all their active GSTNs, they can select the GSTNs which they want to link to the account aggregator handle. At this stage, the GSTNs will be like a bank account number shown in a masked form. The portion of PAN, which is the middle 10 digits, will be masked. And we've given an example here. This is how GSTN be displayed. The first 2 digits of GSTN correspond to the state GSTN codes. So we are hoping that this will help in identification of the state to which that particular GSTN is linked to, attached to. So this is how the discovery. So you see that using a single mobile number and PAN of the GST taxpayer, the user or the taxpayer will be able to see and link, discover all their active GSTins. Then how would the linking and the consent flow take place? In the linking, now once the taxpayer sees the GSTins, the active GSTins on the screen, they can now decide to link the GSTins they want to link to the account aggregator handle. Once they, let's say, they get around 10 GSTins displayed in front of them, if they select 8 and they proceed with linking those 8, they will receive a single OTP from GSTN. In this case, GSTN is the FIP to authorize the linking request. So this is very similar to what we see in a banking flow today, where if there are multiple accounts attached to a single bank, the bank will, the FIP bank will just send one single OTP to the bank account owner to verify the linking request. Likewise, here again, GSTN will send only one single OTP to all the GSTNs that have been discovered using the mobile number of the primary authorized signatory and their PAN number. On entering the OTP, all selected GSTins will be successfully linked to the taxpayer AA handle. So there is no significant difference in the journey which we see today for bank accounts versus GSTin. The only thing is there is an additional identifier which is being used to do the discovery of GST accounts. In terms of giving the consent, again, there is no change. The taxpayer will get to see a consent artifact on their screen, which will be triggered by the FIU. All the parameters of the consent artifact will be displayed. The taxpayer can choose to decide which GSTins, link GSTins they want to give a consent for the data to be shared from GST to the prospective FIU. So it is again, a replica of what we see in our bank account journeys today. So this is, let's also look at what has changed. So, GST data through APIs is still available through alternate channels like GSPs. However, the difference with someone accessing GST data through account aggregator and through an alternate channel like GSP, there are a few differences. First, the taxpayer will not need to log into the GSTN panel anywhere, either for the one-time first time consent they give or the recurring consent, where every time they need to log into the GSTN panel if wanting to share data through the GSP channel. So that requirement will go away with account aggregator. It will flow in the same manner. Today, bank account statements are flowing through account aggregator. The taxpayer will not need to go to GSTN portal to opt in or enable API access for a data fetch. That is what we meant by opted in and opted out taxpayers. So all taxpayers, there is no need for the taxpayer to see whether their API access has been activated, not activated, and do those processes. It will automatically, the moment they come on account aggregator and link their accounts, their data fetch will be enabled with their consent. Third big difference here, and this is what Mr. Raman also kind of highlighted, was that for some reason there was a concept or some fear on the part of the policymakers saying that if we enable sharing of data of MSMEs through account aggregator, we need to take consents from the buyers. because the invoices that are being shared also has some details, some basic information of the buyers of the MSME, and some of the larger buyers may actually object for this data to be made available through AA. However, there was an industry representation made where it was kind of voiced that the data, actually the invoices, belong to the MSME. And even in today's world, they can share this data either as a download or through GSPs with the anyone they want, including the lenders and the FIUs. So there was no need to kind of get this in, but I think there were concerns at the top level. So instead of, now this has been changed. So one second. So instead of now, taking consent from every buyer, there is a proposal from Department of Revenue that we will ask the MSME to give a declaration that he or she takes the responsibility of informing their buyers that they are sharing invoices through account aggregator for, let's say, taking a loan or availing any service. And if tomorrow there is any objection from any of the buyer on sharing invoice level data, they will handle it. So in a way, what this does is this declaration takes away the burden of taking explicit consent from every buyer. However, we need to be very careful in drafting the message or the declaration that a MSME will give on the account aggregator platform. So this is under discussion. We have also shared some text with Department of Revenue, and we're also hoping to make more representation to them on this issue. But the idea is to say that this should not become a bottleneck on the usage of account aggregator. It should be, if at all it is implemented, the buyer's consent be implemented on account aggregator, it would be a much milder version of what was discussed earlier, and it will not add up to any friction in the entire process. I'll also take you to the key elements of the electronic consent artifact. So this is how it will look like. I have explained many of them in my previous slides. The fetch type would, which is the frequency or the type of fetches, could be both one time and periodic. In terms of the consent types, the type of data consented for, and this is how the bank account statements are also shared today, are profile, summary, and transactions. The initial proposal is to say that GSTR 1 Table 4 and GSTR 3B will be mapped to transactions. Basic profile and return filing details will be mapped to profile data. And for summary data, we are in discussion and we'll have to kind of take it up to GST as to what exactly would be the summary level data that can be made available if there is a summary data pull request. And like I mentioned earlier, profile data and return filing data will be shared with transaction and summary data always as default data. We are also planning to activate the consent filter type for GSTR, wherein the customer can actually then decide to share only profile and summary data or transaction data. This is to give a little more flexibility to the citizens. In cases where they do not really want to share the detailed transaction, they can decide to just share their profile information, and there would be a few use cases where only profile information may be needed. So to kind of incorporate that flexibility, we may use the data filter option, which is already there in account aggregator, more often on a GSTR, but we'll have to see as we move forward. So this is again a proposal, not been finalized. So we'll have to see as to what Rabbit comes back with. In terms of the FI types, financial information type, it will be described as GSTR. FIP ID will be GSTN underscore FIP. Type of account, here the type of account and FI types are same, so it will be default. Like in the banking world, you've got deposits and then you have savings account, current account, and term deposit. Here there is really no differentiation because all are GSTRs. So the FI type and account type will be the same, and the account type will be default value. The account number, the GSTIN will be displayed as a masked number. The portion of PAN number in GSTIN will be masked. The purpose codes would be any of the five purpose code which have been defined for account aggregators and being used for bank account statement currently, which includes wealth management, lending, account monitoring. So there's no change here. The from and to, the start date of end date of transaction data, it has been limited to 18 months. The idea is to kind of limit the kind of data that is being transmitted through account aggregator in batches. I'll quickly go through some of the FAQs which we had received from the ecosystem. So the first question, which is interesting, would the same account aggregator integration that has been undertaken by all institutions be applicable to GST? Or the fresh set of integration will have to be done? So the answer is it will be the same integration. The same APIs will work, only the data packet will change, and that your account aggregator will automatically enable through the APIs. However, the front end journey, given that some changes will need to be done on the front end journey in terms of displaying, asking for a customer's taxpayer's primary authorized signatories mobile number, and then displaying the GSTINs, and all of that has to change. And obviously your BREs and LOS need to be customized for be able to ingest the GST data, and able to throw offers, do data analytics, whatever the need is. Is it mandatory to provide banking data to complete GST flow? No, they are two different data FI types. So they can be pulled together, they can be pulled independently. There is no linkage or no requirement for a GST flow to happen along with banking data. So if you decide in your journey you only need GST data and you don't really want to pull banking data of the customer, that's completely possible. Whether all AAs will have access to the GSTN for fetching the data, will it be certain AAs? So GSTN is very clear that it will go live with all account aggregators. To start with, they will integrate with one or two AAs, but they are very clear that immediately they will move on to integrate with all AAs. Would current accounts be included as a part of discovery in the AA journey? So they are already enabled. In fact, 19 out of 23 banks which are currently live on AA's FIPs are already sharing data of sole proprietor current accounts through AA. And as we all know, non-sole proprietor current accounts are awaiting clarifications from Revit, so they have still not been enabled by any of the banks. But yeah, sole proprietor current accounts are already being shared through AA, barring a few banks. Then another question is, how will the consent be managed with account aggregators, savings and GST? Will a single consent be taken for savings account and GST? So again, like I explained, even today citizens can select, like today also, if there are accounts from different banks, the citizens can select those accounts and give consent in a single tap. The only thing which will change is that instead of bank accounts, there would be another entry which they could say, which could be their GSTINs also being displayed along with their bank accounts, and they can give consent in a single tap after deciding which account types they want to share the data for. Are there any charges proposed by GSTN for sharing the data? As of now, there are no charges proposed by GSTN for sharing the data, but we'll have to see as we go forward. Currently, there's no discussion around that. What if user selected wrong GST of other state? What is the alternative to restart the journey? So the first two digits of the GSTIN, like I explained earlier, also represents the GST state code. So the account aggregator, so what can be done is that the account aggregator can translate the state code to the state name and display it to the taxpayer at the time of discovery along with the GSTINs. So this will make it very easy for the taxpayer to select the right GSTIN, right? Because otherwise, if it is without the state name, the taxpayer may find it difficult to recall the state name and the corresponding GSTIN. If there is still a error, the taxpayer can again they'll have to redo the entire step. So they have to go back to the step where their GSTINs were discovered and again choose and link the right GSTIN for which they want to share the data. So there's nothing, in terms of the journey, we all need to understand that nothing much will change. There are no additional integrations required. And, once GST on account aggregator goes live, it can be activated quickly. In terms of the rollout and the next steps, the next immediate step is, and we are hoping that Rabbit will release the specifications which are around FI type, account type, and data schemas. They are in the final stage of kind of, deciding on these values. And like I've showed you, the data schemas have already been shared, prepared by the industry, a lot of volunteers from the industry, and shared with GST. And GST has already got a approval from DOR for these data schemas. So we see very kind of limited reason, no hardly any reason for any delay from Revit to release this specification. It should be a matter of few days to couple of weeks. Once this comes in, and we've already shared these data fields with the account aggregators, a few of them have already initiated the work to prepare the sandboxes, which can be made available to FIUs to build their internal systems, BREs, rule engines, how do you consume the data, how to give decisioning. So all that work can start in parallel. We've already shared this with you. uh, then the GSTN has already completed their technical design document, and the Infosys team, their TSP, has already initiated the tech work. So hopefully this should again, and given that there's complete commitment from the policymakers to take this through, we are hoping that this would be completed in a time bound manner. And once they complete the integration, they have to do their testing and integrations with all AAs and go live. We are expecting that the entire complete onboarding of GSTN on account aggregator should be completed before March 2023 of next year. However, as we all know, there could be some unexpected delays which we're not foreseeing today. But this is what our sense is, given that of the work which has been already gone into being prepared for their getting them prepared for this integration. There were a few other questions which we had received from the ecosystem. So we've actually gone through all of them, and we have tried to address them through our presentation at different places. But if we have left out anything, we can maybe take it up in the question and answer round. I'll just pause here and request Ruchi to open us up for the Q&A round. And in the Q&A round, we also have Mr. Mohan. He is the chief head product management from Tally, and he has as a volunteer, he has helped us immensely on kind of doing all the work that we are doing with GST today. So I will just request him to join us for the Q&A round, and we are ready to take questions now.
All right. Thank you so much, Shalini. So we have some questions on the right side of your screen. You'll be able to see on chats. Let me first go through these two questions. It says in marketplace lending scenarios, sellers will have issues if the marketplace has visibility to buyer and pricing info in GST data. Any thoughts on this?
So actually, the marketplace will not have a visibility to buyer and pricing info in GST data, because the data will be shared with the FIUs directly in the backend. And like Mr. Raman said, the data flows to the FIUs backend directly, and they, using their BREs and rule engines, throw back the offers that are to be displayed on the marketplace. So under no circumstance, the data will be available to the marketplace. It will be, ingested only with the FIUs which are regulated and registered with one of the four financial sector regulators.
So just to let the audiences know, we are running a little late. So we'll give another 7-8 minutes to Q&A as against planned 15 minutes. And we'll take up as many questions. Otherwise, y'all can get in touch with Sarmati outside of this event, and we'll be very happy to take on more questions. So we have one more here. Shalini, will there be more failures if primary account number on bank statements and GSTN data is different?
Primary account number, I'm not clear on this question actually, because the primary account number will be different for bank statement and GSTN. So I think are you referring to a primary mobile number? Mohan, if
Yeah, Mohan?
yeah, am I
Yeah,
kind of understanding this question correctly?
yeah, because I'm also not getting actually what she's saying. Because the primary mobile number and the GSTN number actually what we're going to use. I don't know how it is going to conflict actually here. Maybe we'll get more
Uh,
information from her. Yeah.
yeah, so Neha is saying it is the mobile number.
Okay. Yeah, so it won't be actually, because even in our current journeys, the account aggregators allow the use of different mobile numbers for discovering accounts from multiple banks. So today also, if there are two, as a user, I have a different mobile number updated in bank A and a different mobile number updated in bank B. I can use two mobile numbers to fetch my data. So likewise here also, if the mobile numbers are different on your bank account statement and GSTN, you can use two mobile numbers to complete the do the discovery and the linking process. So I don't see how it should lead to higher failure rate.
Mm, the next one is, can we use one OTP for both bank statement and GST information?
Yeah. So this I've already explained as a part of my presentation at the time of giving consent. So there are two parts of to it. One at the point of discovery, where you have to give the mobile number registered with your bank account, and similarly for GST data, you have to give the mobile number of the primary authorized signatory, and both have to be verified. So if these two numbers are different, then obviously two OTPs have to be entered. Likewise, at the stage of linking, where every FIP will send a authorization request, the first authorization request in the case of a bank account statement will come from a bank where you have a bank account, the FIP bank, and a second OTP will come from GSTN, which is the second FIP for which you are sharing or linking data on account aggregator. So it will be one OTP per FIP is what you'll need to enter.
All right. So Kulranjan from Axis Bank is asking, can the bank statement and GST data be shared in a single session?
Yeah, so I think we've already answered this question. They
Yeah.
can be done in a single session. Both all of the information, the discover after doing the initial discovery using the mobile numbers registered in your bank statements and GST data, the user in a single tap can give a consent to share the data. But only the linking part is where they will get OTPs from each FIP. Otherwise, it can be completed in a single session. There is no you don't need to get into multiple sessions.
Okay.
I think there is also a question on, okay, you picked.
Is there any other question you would like to answer,
No, I
Shweta?
think we can take this up. I would request Mohan to
Yeah,
take this.
Mohan, on your right side, you'll see Q&As and messages. If there's anything specific that you think we need to answer in this session.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. So GSTN is available beyond sole proprietors. Chakri from Perfios is asking. So does that mean AA can now onboard users like private limited companies?
Yes, the answer is yes. Because it is only the only requirement here is that the authorized signatory needs to verify his registered mobile number on the system. So this, I think Mohan can kind of give a more technical answer here, because this authorized signatory is someone who's been designated by the company to do the transactions on the GSTN portal on their behalf. Right, Mohan?
Yeah, yeah. So while registering, actually, company need to authorize somebody for dealing with GSTN actually. So with that, actually, there is a primary and there can be multiple also. But currently, we are looking at primary authorized signatory who can authenticate and get the data.
Okay.
And I want
We
to
have
take one question actually. Ramdas actually saying whether the summary can be GSTR 1 and 3B, and the transaction can be e-invoice data. So GST 1 and 3B, GST 1 will have the transaction level data also, and we will have multiple return period actually. That's why it cannot be taken at the summary level. The summary is actually what we are looking at is the snapshot, um, and the transactions. What we are looking at all the return, and the user should be able to filter whether it's a previous return or it can specify the period also for whatever the number of period actually the return can be fetched actually. So currently this is the thought.
Because whatever is there in summary, the way we understand, has to be at a particular point in time, right? And if you're looking for GSTR 1 and 3B data, you're looking for a data over a period of time. So because of that, it has to be categorized in transactions logically, because you would want to see a flow of invoices and not at a particular point in time.
So there's this other question that if purpose is not mentioned about GSTN, how can the customer know he or she has to select GSTN?
I did not, because this
What
is,
yeah,
yeah.
need more clarity actually.
Okay.
What purpose actually not mentioned about GST?
So this, I think this will come from the lender. I mean, when they're notifying the customer with a consent artifact, there they will have to choose what is the purpose for which they're asking this data and what information are they looking for. And that is where the customer will select, whether they want to share the data or not. So it would all come from the consent artifact. I mean, if I've understood the question correctly. Yeah, so this at present GSTN portal allows to fetch single GSTN data with each OTP. No, it will be a single OTP for all GSTNs that have been discovered using the mobile number and PAN combination. So there will be no need to kind of enter OTP for every GSTN data that is that the taxpayer wants to share with a prospective FIU. So that is a big difference. If that was a case earlier where every GSTIN needed to be verified or authenticated using a OTP, that requirement will go away now.
Right. We'll just take one more question and then we will start off with our next session because we're running a little late. This was the last question that came in. Any
So
scope of
Amit, yeah, we understand that the GSTR 2A would is really important as an input parameter for the completeness of the rule engines and ensuring that there are no round entries. But give as of now, GSTN has not got approval from DOR for inclusion of this returns. However, we look forward to making a representation on behalf of the entire financial sector to DOR later on. The idea is to let's start with whatever has been enabled, make use of it, and then go back and ask them to operationalize more returns.
Great. So on that note, I would like to wrap up this session because we are, no, we knew that we would be overshooting the time, but we've, just respecting the other presenters as well. Thank you very much, Shalini. Thank you very much, Mohan, for your time. And taking back from the last thing that Shalini said, that there will be questions. There are still more questions that are unanswered. There are queries that we would be going back and asking from the authorities on how things will be taken forward. So for now this is what we know, and let's get started. And congratulations once again to everybody on this big news. I will be ending this session. After this is our TSP spotlight session, which is technology service providers session. There are two technology service providers who are going to be showcasing their products and solution for the ecosystem. They have been in the lending solutions for the lending business for a long time. So I would request the audiences to attend this session. One person can attend only one session, so you can swap your time. I mean, you can divide your time, or if you're a bigger team, some of y'all can attend one of the session while the other attends the other. So thank you very much, and we'll get started with the other one in the next 10 seconds. Thanks, Shalini.